I've mentioned flow several times and also key signature strengths. So let me talk you through this in a little bit more detail. Flow is a positive psychology concept. It's proposed by Strascheg Center, and he describes it as the mental state in which a person in an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and success in the process of the activity. He also describes it as where challenge and competence meet. So in one way, this is almost like being on the edge of one's personal creativity in a specific context. In flow, the emotions are channeled and aligned with the task in hand. And you'd recognize you were in flow because you might have an element of spontaneous rapture when performing the task or immediately after completion. You'd have deep focus on nothing other than the activity. You'd have a sense of timelessness. Another way of recognizing this, either in yourself or others, is that if you were interrupted and you were in a state of flow, you might be a bit surprised, you might be a bit disorientated, you might even be a little bit grumpy, almost as if you've been awakened from a deep sleep because you have been that engaged in what you are doing. So the next challenge would be to identify when you are spontaneously in a state of flow. And this is where another positive psychology resource becomes really useful, and that is the values into action, the key signature strengths test, otherwise known as the VIA. You can find this on the University of Pennsylvania website. I'll tell you a little bit about the key signature strengths. There are 24 groups of human behavior that have been drawn for some of the most inspirational literature in the world. Things like the Torah, the Quran, the works of Aristotle, and from these distilled into 6 core virtues that have then been subdivided into 25 strengths. So then this is where I have a task for you, so you can get to not just recognize your key signature strengths, hopefully having done the test, but also start to get really good at articulating them for others. And the framework I'm going to introduce to you is something called the STAR format. STAR stands for situation or context, the big picture if you like, task, the objective in hand, your specific thing you want to achieve, actions, what you do, and results, the outcome. Think about a good fairy story. It starts once upon a time, situation. The king decided to marry his only daughter. Task, what the story was all about, the bulk of the story, and the results. Okay. Let me try and give you an example. One of my key signature strengths is generosity and kindness. So some years ago, when one of my ex-students from Pakistan, who was trying to start a business and was staying with me for a few days, announced that his wife was pregnant and this was the first child, and she was in Scotland, a long way away from home and family. And I realised they had very little money on which to rent somewhere that would be a home in the style to which his wife was accustomed. I thought about it for a little while, and then I realised I had the capacity to effectively offer them a home, at least until the baby was born. So I did this, and they agreed. And I could go through the whole story of that year and how Mabasha and Afia became my family, my friends for the year, and many adventures we shared together, and they learnt a lot about Scottish culture. And eventually the baby was born, it was a little boy, and they continued to stay with me. They stayed with me until after his first birthday. We had his first birthday party in my home. He took his first steps in my home. The neighbourhood, my community, also was very excited about this because this little boy was basically the first child that had been born in our little cul-de-sac of about 10 houses for something like 20, 25 years. So the whole community embraced him. But Afia and Basha also felt part of that home, that community, until they were ready to move on because he could afford to rent somewhere to support his family.